All right. Good evening, everyone. I think we're live, as this is showing live on my end. And welcome, everyone. We're streaming live, I see, on Facebook, on Twitter, on my YouTube page, and yes, on Twitch. Yes, I have a Twitch account, so you gotta go where the people are. So if you are watching this, I appreciate you tuning in. I did want to give an update on what we can expect this evening and during the overnight hours. I think, as you've heard the last couple of days, we're in for this week-long rain event, and that still looks to be on track. Although today's a good example because, really, after the morning rain we had, it was actually a nice day. So that's a classic example of a storm system moving out, sinking air subsidence in its wake, and then the atmosphere recovers like it's doing tonight, and then we do it all over again. So that's kind of what we're going to see the next couple of days. Although I think today will probably, or tonight and during overnight hours, hopefully, cross your fingers, that would be the worst of it. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look, as you're already seen, take a look at the radar and get an idea of what we got going on right now. So the line of storms has congealed from individual supercells that are out in West Texas, and there are still supercells out in West Texas. We'll probably take a look at that in just a second. And so we are seeing it, as we thought, we are seeing these storms congeal into an organized line. And that's something that will be the biggest risk we see during the overnight hours, is that line moving through and causing potentially some severe weather, most likely in the form of damaging wind gusts. But we're hoping that as time goes on, that's looking like it's slightly less possibility. It just depends on how the atmosphere recovers. Excuse me, how much the atmosphere recovers, and we'll talk about that. So with that, let's put this in motion here. And again, you can kind of see these storms are organizing into a line, not moving terribly fast, but they are moving in our general direction. The good news is that for most of this line, you don't see a lot of yellow boxes. You do see a box down at the end of a line. End of the line, that's what we call tail end Charlie, and those storms tend to be the worst at the end of the line. So that's really, at this moment, which could change, of course, but at this moment, that's the only severe thunderstorm warning we have with this line of storms. So you can see, we're starting to get arch to it, and that is what we figured would happen again over time. Now, you have to remember, too, it's not all bad news when you see these storms, individual storms especially, congeal into a line, because it does take away, not totally, it does take away the hail threat that we see, the big hail we've seen in West Texas tonight. So it does take away that threat, but we kind of trade the hail threat for a damaging wind threat, and so that's potentially. So that's what we have to look out for, and we'll talk about that. What the real chances of that are. All right, so let's go over these graphics now and get you a better idea of what we have going on. So as far as watches and warnings, there are certainly no warnings in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex right now, so that's good. And technically, there's not even any watches. Now, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch, as the graphic shows, basically west of Dallas-Fort Worth and really west, the counties west of 35. Now, that's mainly for that line that we saw on the radar. Tornadoes can't be ruled out with this line of storms, and it would be more of a spin up, or it'd be more at the end of the line typically. But tornadoes are not really a big threat tonight, thankfully. And like I said, hail is not near as big a threat as we could have had to deal with earlier today, and certainly not what they're dealing with in West Texas. So not that hail is impossible to have in these storms, because and we'll blow up the radar. We'll zoom in on the radar here in just a second, and these individual cores within the line can definitely have hail in them. It's just we typically don't see the big hail with that. Okay, so again, from the bigger picture standpoint, what can we expect? So this is the latest severe thunderstorm, severe weather severe thunderstorm outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. And as you can see, the moderate risk is way out in West Texas, and it's very well founded because, unfortunately, been several tornadoes. There was a strong tornado in the Sterling County area way out in West Texas. Luckily, as far as I know right now, it hit an unpopulated area, so that's good. Hopefully it stays that way. So the tornado threat is way out in West Texas. But you can see the Dallas-Fort Worth area is in the slight risk, the yellow, and that's 2 out of 5, of course, from the severeness, if you will, category. So we're not looking at anything horrible from a severe weather standpoint, but still definitely a chance. Well, let's go back to the maps. Okay, so this is specifically the hazards. This is a tornado outlook, and again, just like we talked about, the 10% chance of tornadoes is way out in West Texas, so not really much of a chance. Not zero, but they're not much of a chance for us in Dallas-Fort Worth. But you do see the Storm Prediction Center put us in the 2% category because, again, you just can't roll it out completely. And then from the hail threat, again, thankfully, the hail threat is not huge in this neck of the woods. You see the 45% chance, which is really, really high out in West Texas. Of course, you got the hatched area, and as we always talked about, anything in the hatched area is percent chance of seeing 2-inch diameter hail or larger. And of course, unfortunately, they've seen larger than that out in West Texas, so they kind of nailed that pretty good. Now, the threat, though, that I think that we have to be concerned about, at least somewhat, is the damaging wind threat. So again, to be severe, the damaging wind threat the winds had to be 58 miles an hour or greater in gust. So that's how you define a severe thunderstorm. And so that's how the Storm Prediction Center puts percentages on the 5% to 15 to 30. What's the chances of that happening? And always remember, at a point within 25 miles, that's the chance. Now, the hatched area, that's winds in excess of 70 miles an hour are possible. Now, it doesn't show up well on this map, but again, Dallas-Fort Worth is in the yellow. Now, there's a little part of Fort Worth and Tarrant County, and for my friend Angela Trophy Club, that area is within the hatched wind area. So, definitely, again, the further west you go, the better chances of that, unfortunately. And then as far as tomorrow goes, this is a day 2 outlook, and you see that slight risk area for mainly Dallas-Fort Worth and southeast. That's to anticipate what's happening overnight, moving into that part of Texas at that point. So don't really want to talk about that too much because that's tomorrow. We have tonight to worry about. Okay, so what I want to show you now is I want to show you the satellite picture because it's going to show us a couple things that that will impact our weather overnight. Yes, Angela, I know, I told you, I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. I got to report their weather accurately. Okay, so I wanted to show you the satellite picture because there's a lot of interesting things about it that may actually help us out tonight. So I'm going to refresh this real quick. So again, let me put my drawing tools on here. So just to give everybody a reference point, of course it shows up very nice at night, but that's Dallas-Fort Worth. And what you saw earlier today, as we go through these loops, you saw some thunderstorms develop down in the Houston area and move off to the northeast. And they were actually, they weren't anything horrible, but they were definitely big and produced a lot of rain. So what that tends to do is that blocks moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, that comes up this way. And of course, we do have a southerly flow today. If you walked outside, you definitely felt that. And so a lot of times what happens is these thunderstorms that form here block this flow from getting up here. Now, there is flow there. It's just that there may not be as much. And so the thought is there's a couple of things that, again, that are working in our favor, that these storms that are congealing to the west of us are going to move to the east of us, or east towards us, is that two things. One is there's not quite as much moisture from the Gulf of Mexico because of the storms in the Houston area. That's a possibility that would affect the content of the moisture, the amount. And then the other thing is, again, from the storms we had this morning, we had this sinking air over us most of the day. And so that's now that, like I said, the sun did come out eventually. The atmosphere started to recover. You saw some clouds towards sunset. You kind of see those clouds right before the sunset. That just tells you that the moisture did start to return and the atmosphere did start to become more unstable than it was earlier in the day. you take those two things together, cross your fingers. Not quite as much moisture as we thought, and then with the storms moving into air that's it's not going to be sinking. It'll probably be neutral, but it may be rising, and so that tends to dampen the intensity of the storms. And again, that's why you see the severe. I feel like that's why you see the severe thunderstorm watch just west of Dallas-Fort Worth, because those storms that are out there right now definitely have the possibility of being severe west of us. But as they move further east, again, you have hopefully some sinking air to work against it, and not quite as much moisture. It will tampen down those storms. I think the storms will come through, and we'll get some quote unquote storms, but hopefully it won't be as bad as they thought earlier today. All right. So with that, let's go back to the radar here and get the latest on that. And let's see if I can get my radar screen to work. There we go. Okay. So we're going to put this in motion. Now, again, unless there's been a warning that's just been issued that this radar hasn't updated yet, you see these line of storms. I kind of jokingly like to say behaving. So they're doing that right now. Let's hope they stay that way. But again, there's no severe thunderstorm warnings with the line right now. But that could change pretty quick. So don't be shocked if you see a warning come up. Now, to give you an idea of what we're thankfully missing out on is the bad weather out in West Texas. So I just wanted to show you a couple radars out here real quick. And you see a lot of hail contours on here. And, these are storms that were formed really in eastern New Mexico and made, making their way towards us. As you can see, they, go way on down here towards San Angelo. Let me take this one on. Let me put the Abilene Radar on here. It gives you a little clearer picture of the storm since it's closer. So again, the good news is that there's no severe thunderstorm severe thunderstorm warnings with this line. But again, that could change. But what we're hoping, again, is there's a couple things working against us, some sinking air or even neutral air not rising, and then not quite as much moisture as we thought. But again, there's plenty of moisture. So what does that mean for us overnight? So I think now this is Texas, so it can change. But right now it's not looking quite as dire as I thought, but I hope I don't have to eat my words on that. So again, you're seeing this line form, and as this line forms, you're going to see it really, because that's not a good drawing. Let me try this again. So you're going to see this. So the winds in the upper atmosphere are going to want to make the line go like this, and but the line's going to want to try to go this way just by its own momentum. So I think that's where you're going to see this line hold together, but the worst of the worst be on the southern end where there's more instability. So I think that's what we're going to see. So the bottom line is this, and before I say that, let's switch back to the Fort Worth radar so we get a little bit better picture of it from our standpoint. There we go. Okay, so we'll put this in motion. Why? I'll give you the bottom line. So the bottom line is this. We will probably have storms after midnight, 1 o'clock. Hopefully they won't be severe, but there's definitely that possibility. I think if you get closer to bed, whatever that bedtime is for you, if it's 10, 11, whatever, we'll have a little bit better idea, and I'll try to give a post updating everything when we get a little bit closer to bedtime. But I would say this, just to be safe, if you can put your cars in the garage, I definitely would do that. If you have any loose items on your in your yard, on your property, I definitely would secure those. Definitely could have some gusty winds. And then as far as the timing of the storms, if they do indeed keep on this track, like I said, after 1 o'clock, it may be around 3 o'clock in the morning, depending on where you live. Hopefully by the time school starts and rush hour starts up, hopefully most of the worst of the stuff will be past us. And then there's a chance we could do it all over again tomorrow. So that's just the weather pattern that we're in. That's just the way it is. So, like I said, nothing to be overly concerned about. I don't think there's a big tornado risk, not zero. I don't think there's a big hail risk, not zero for big hail, but there's a risk for hail with these storms, these stronger cores. But the wind risk is much greater, relatively speaking. So, with that, I'll keep you updated overnight. And let me check the comments here real quick. Ashley, my son has a 3-mile run tomorrow at 6:30 in the morning. Yeah, hoping for good weather. I don't know if it'd be good weather, but the storms might have moved out by then. So, okay. So, yes, Pamela, say a prayer. That never hurts. Yes, Kaylee agrees with that. I definitely agree with that. And yes, Dayton, it was very humid out there tonight. Still is. So as always, I appreciate everyone watching, tuning in. I'm watching the weather, so you don't have to. I'll keep everyone up to date a little bit later tonight. May do a post before I go to bed. But like I said, nothing terribly to be concerned about, but just something to be aware of in the back of your mind that you might get woken up. And just like I said, just if you do, just be prepared and we'll be fine. If it happens to be bad, which I hope not, I will come on and talk about it. Hopefully I won't have to do that. So be safe, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. It'll be a quiet evening, and it'll most likely be quiet before until at least 1 o'clock in the morning. And so, like I said, nothing really to worry about. Like I said, as always, I'm watching the weather so you don't have to. I hope everyone has a great evening. And like I said, I really appreciate you watching, and we will talk to you soon.